Plastic has caused trillions of dollars in damages since it was introduced in the 1950s. While many countries are working towards fixing this issue, 91% of plastic is still not recycled. Plastic has been around since the 1950s, with 8.3 billion metric tons of plastic being produced since then, while currently around 380 million metric tons are being produced each year, with roughly half of our global annual plastic production being designed for single-use products. This is shown in 2017 when packaging production constituted the highest demand use for plastic, with 146 million metric tons being used. The most concerning issue is how virtually every piece of plastic that has ever been made still exists in some shape or form, with the exceptions of the small amount that has been incinerated. Americans purchase about 50 billion water bottles per year, averaging 13 bottles per month for every person in the US. This means that for every person that uses a reusable water bottle, they will save an average of 156 plastic bottles annually. This would be a massive step in the right direction, as once the majority of people start doing something, people tend to find the good in it, allowing for millions of plastic bottles to never make it into the production line in the first place. While plastic bottles are a huge deal, it's not the only problem. Plastic bags are also another massive problem, with 5 trillion bags being produced worldwide annually. Americans alone throw away 100 billion bags over the year. That is equivalent to dumping 12 million barrels of crude oil. While you may think that this really isn't that much, it may change your mind to know that plastic bags have an average working life of 15 minutes. These plastic bags are estimated to take 1,000 years to disintegrate completely. If a person were to switch to reusable shopping bags, they would be able to save about 307 plastic bags annually. Plastic straws are another problem the world faces when it comes to plastic pollution, with Americans alone using 500 million drinking straws every day. That is equal to 182 billion straws used by Americans annually, while the European figure stands at 25.3 billion straws in a year, or 13.9% of what Americans use annually. This is a problem that the world should focus on. While Americans may be way over most countries when it comes to plastic waste, it is still a huge problem in many countries. Plastic cups are one of these problems, with 500 billion being produced every year globally, as well as producing 29 million US tons of polystyrene each year. 25 billion styrofoam coffee cups made out of this polystyrene are thrown away by Americans alone each year. Although these numbers look like huge problems, and they definitely are, most countries can do nothing about these growing numbers, as many countries lack the infrastructure to prevent plastic pollution. Most countries lack things like sanitary landfills, incineration facilities, recycling capacity, and circular economy infrastructure. These facilities are fundamental when it comes to having a well-designed and optimized recycling system, which most countries are unable to afford. When these plastics end up in these landfills, they break down into tiny toxic particles that contaminate the soil and waterways. They also enter the food chain where animals accidentally ingest them. This is shown by the fact that at least 14 million tons of plastic end up in our oceans and rivers every year, with 10 million tons dumped in the oceans annually. That is equal to more than a garbage truck load every minute. This becomes even more concerning when you learn that there will be an estimate of more plastic in the ocean than fish by 2050, according to the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. However, researchers in Germany indicate that terrestrial microplastic pollution is much higher than marine microplastic pollution, and is estimated to be 4 to 23 times higher depending on the environment. With this, it could ultimately have adverse health effects on humans and animals. There are already 1 million marine animals killed by pollution each year. This is also apparent as well since 100% of mussels tested have contained microplastics, and studies have shown that humans eat over 40 pounds of plastic in their lifetime. Israel places 5th with only 19% of their plastics ending up being recycled. This means that 81% of their plastics end up in landfill. Greece comes in at 4th place. While being tied with Israel with an 81% to 19% landfill to recycling ratio, the reason Greece ends up in 4th place is because they have been able to make more progress than Israel has been able to in the same amount of time. Mexico comes up next on this list, with only 5% of plastics being recycled. This is a huge jump between Greece and Mexico. However, Mexico has implemented several initiatives at a government level, while individuals are trying as well. Coming in 2nd place, Turkey only recycles 1% of their plastic waste. The other 99% ends up in the landfills. This has indicated a 6% increase in landfill waste, and a 33% decrease in recycling since 2000. However, the government has designed a zero waste project to significantly boost the recycling rates over the coming years, with their aim to hit 35% by 2023. And with the #1 spot, Chile also only recycles 1% of their plastics, with the other 99% ending up in their landfills. The major reason Chile is unable to improve their recycling effort comes down to funding. Without funding, the country has been unable to build the necessary infrastructure that is needed to increase their recycling around the country. The ocean is said to be Earth's life support, with 97% of the world's water held by the ocean. We rely on the oceans to regulate our climate, absorb CO2, and is the #1 source for protein for over 1 billion people. Plastic has become a huge problem in the oceans of today. It has affected both humans and animals, with more than 1 million seabirds and 100,000 marine animals dying from plastic pollution every year. It has been shown that 100% of baby sea turtles tested had plastic in their stomachs. The most devastating impact on marine life ecosystems is the damage it can cause to animals when they come into contact with or ingest these plastics, which include suffocation, entanglement, lacerations, infections, and internal injuries. 17% of the species affected by the presence of plastic in the ocean are on the International Union for Conservation of Nature Red List of Threatened Species. This should be very alarming, as it shows that some of the most endangered species in the ocean may go extinct from a byproduct of what the human race has created. This doesn't even include the fact that floating plastic items can help transport invasive species into different marine ecosystems. This can lead to endangerment of their biodiversity and their food web. When plastic ends up in the ocean, it breaks down into microplastics, in which marine animals ingest the particles. When these marine animals ingest these microplastics, it leads into the human food chain, which in turn leads to humans ingesting the microplastics that were originally left to break down in the ocean. These plastic materials are carcinogenic and can affect the body's systems, causing developmental, neurological, reproductive, and immune disorders. The majority of plastic pollution in the ocean is caused by littering. We buy or use disposable plastic items such as food wrappers, plastic bags, razors, bottles, and many more products and do not dispose of them properly, which causes them to end up in our waterways and eventually in the ocean. However, not all plastic waste in the ocean is an effect of littering, as many plastics and microplastics are the product of improper manufacturing processes, and about 20% of the ocean's plastic pollution comes from industrial fishing. These are very important metrics to keep in mind, especially when plastic waste makes up 80% of all marine pollution and about 8 to 10 metric tons of plastic end up in the ocean each year. As of 2021, this is 50 to 75 trillion pieces of plastic and microplastics in the ocean. That is almost 6.25 to 9.38 times more than the population of Earth. 2 decades ago, the world was producing half as much plastic, with the bulk of the new plastic ending up in the landfill, incinerated, or leaking into the environment, and only 9% successfully recycled. That means that as we go through the decades, we are rapidly increasing the amount of plastic that the world has been using. That is a very dangerous game to play when we currently only have one planet that we inhabit. OECD countries alone are behind 14% of overall plastic leakage. Within that, OECD countries account for 11% of macroplastic leakage and 35% microplastic leakage. OECD countries include countries like Austria, Belgium, Canada, Denmark, France, Germany, Greece, and Iceland. While these numbers are outrageous, it has been shown that the human race is able to decrease their plastic usage, as a 2.2% decrease in plastic use occurred during the 2020 COVID-19 crisis. This occurred as the economic activity slowed. However, a rise in littering, food takeaway packaging, and plastic medical equipment such as masks happened in the same amount of time. Then as the economy rebounded, so did the plastic consumption, which shows that even though we had the capabilities to change the damage we are doing to the world, humans have become too comfortable destroying it without even realizing. In more than 120 countries, there's a ban or tax on single-use plastics. However, they have not done enough to reduce overall pollution, and plastic consumption has quadrupled over the past 30 years. With global plastic production doubling from 2000 to 2019 to reach 460 million tons. Coming with this domain, plastics have accounted for 3.4% of global greenhouse gas emissions. while researchers estimate a loss of 1 to 5% in marine ecosystem services as a result of plastic pollution. This reduction equals a loss of about 500 billion to 2.5 trillion per year. That is $33,000 per metric ton of plastic pollution. If you liked this video, please like, subscribe, and leave any feedback in the comments below.